Ever heard of a guy named Sherburne Hopkins? Yeah, probably not. And yet this one man might just be the hidden architect behind one of the 20th century's biggest, bloodiest events, the Mexican Revolution. Let's pull back the curtain on this story of America's secret war right next door. Okay, so our story kicks off on this really tense day right on the US-Mexico border. You've got William Howard Taft meeting the longtime Mexican president, Porfirio Díaz. Now, this is a huge deal. It's the first time a sitting US president had ever gone to Mexico. So for the cameras, it's all smiles and handshakes, but behind closed doors, things are a lot different. An ultimatum is on the table.
So here's the deal. Taft has 3 big demands. 1, stop buying all those advanced weapons from Germany. 2, stop building that canal you've got going because it's going to compete with R1 in Panama. And 3, devalue your currency. And to every single one of those demands, President Diaz had the exact same answer. No, absolutely not. He wasn't about to let the US dictate Mexico's future.
Taft left that meeting completely empty-handed, and he was furious. The idea of a strong, independent Mexico getting cozy with Germany, that was just not acceptable. So when he gets back to Washington, his next meeting isn't with his Secretary of State or some big general. No, it's with a private citizen, a lawyer. So the question is, who was this guy, and what could he possibly do that the President of the United States couldn't? Well, that man's name was Sherburne Hopkins. And he wasn't a spy or a soldier in the way you might think. He was a lawyer. But his specialty was something, let's just say, very unique and incredibly dangerous. He specialized in the legal business of starting revolutions. So Hopkins was a classic DC insider. He was a sharp lobbyist, spoke fluent Spanish, and he just had this knack for Latin American politics. He was so good at what he did, so connected, that the US State Department itself later gave him a pretty wild title, the confidential agent of practically every Mexican revolutionary. And his career path was, well, it was a weird one. He first gets famous defending a guy in this bizarre, fake bomb plot that involved a Supreme Court justice. Then he moves on to representing Chilean rebels, and that's where he really learns the ins and outs of the global arms trade. And with a resume like that, by 1903, he's moving in Washington's most elite circles, which is where he first meets his future partner in crime, William Howard Taft. Now, before he took on a project as huge as Mexico, Hopkins had what you might call a training ground. He spent about 10 years honing his skills during all those conflicts that were sweeping through Central America, the ones we often call the Banana Wars. During that whole decade, if you were a rebel group in Nicaragua, Honduras, or Guatemala, Hopkins was the guy you called. His DC law firm basically became a one-stop shop for any revolutionary who needed American cash, and more importantly, American guns. And he got it down to a science. He developed this simple 4-step playbook. First, find a rebel group with potential. Second, connect them to his secret network of American financiers. Third, tell them exactly what kind of weapons they needed to buy. And fourth, this is the brilliant part, structure every single deal so it was technically legal under US law. He wasn't some back alley gun runner. He was a lawyer, arming revolutions with a pen and a contract. So, with his methods perfected, Hopkins was ready for his masterpiece. And after Taft's disastrous meeting with Diaz, the stage was set. It was time to unleash his playbook on America's southern neighbor, Mexico. And it all kicked off with a simple business transaction. In 1910, the brother of a revolutionary leader named Francisco Madero just walks into Hopkins' office and hands him a retainer, $50,000. Now, that's over $1 million in today's money. The revolution was officially open for business. You have to understand, Hopkins' loyalty wasn't to some grand ideal, it was to the mission, keeping Mexico unstable. He starts by arming Madero to take down Diaz. But when Madero gets killed, Hopkins doesn't miss a beat. He just shifts his support over to the next guy, Carranza. Then, as the whole thing splinters into chaos, he starts advising the legendary Pancho Villa. And finally, when the dust starts to settle, he picks the eventual winner, Álvaro Obregón, and finances his final push for power. See, Hopkins wasn't a revolutionary, he was a kingmaker. But this raises the big question, right? Why? Why on earth would the United States, even through a guy like Hopkins, want to plunge its own neighbor into a decade of horrific civil war? What was the real motive here? The answer, according to the sources we're looking at, was pure fear. You see, under President Diaz, Mexico wasn't some basket case. It was actually a rapidly industrializing nation. The economy was humming, the military was getting modern equipment, and it was doing all of it with help from America's #1 global competitor, Imperial Germany. And this chart really lays it out. Sure, American companies like JP Morgan had a piece of the pie in things like railroads and oil, but Germany was making serious moves in the areas that really mattered. They were selling Mexico top-of-the-line Mauser rifles and Krupp artillery, so Mexico didn't need US weapons anymore. They were investing in tech and chemicals, even setting up university exchange programs.
So you have to look at it from Washington's perspective. A strong, modern Mexico, armed to the teeth by Germany, wasn't a potential partner. It was a strategic nightmare right on their southern border. So the revolution wasn't really about freedom or democracy. It was a preemptive strike designed to neutralize a growing threat before it got too big.
And you know what? The plan worked. Mexico was thrown into chaos. The German threat was gone. But this secret war came with a price tag. A price that wasn't paid by anyone in Washington, but was paid in full by the people of Mexico. And that price was paid in blood. A decade of brutal fighting left an estimated 1 million people dead. 1 million. Just think about that. A human catastrophe that was fueled and funded from a fancy law office hundreds of miles away. The destruction was also economic. That modern industrial engine that Diaz had been building, it was completely shattered. The country lost a quarter of its entire gross domestic product. All that progress just wiped off the map. And the long-term impact was maybe even worse. The war set Mexico's industrial development back by at least 2 decades, making sure it would stay poor and stay in the shadow of its powerful northern neighbor. But the destruction wasn't just physical, and this is probably the most shocking claim from our source. After the war, one of Hopkins's good friends, a man named Jose Vasconcelos, was put in charge of creating Mexico's entire public education system. The source alleges that Vasconcelos, who was a known Nazi sympathizer, built a whole new national myth for Mexico, this story of a perfect indigenous past that was ruined by foreigners. And the argument is that this victim narrative served a purpose. It kept Mexico looking backwards, focused on old wounds, and psychologically incapable of ever standing up to the neighbor that had just engineered its collapse. And that leaves us with one last, pretty unsettling question. The story of Sherburne Hopkins suggests that history isn't always what it seems. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other big moments, how many other revolutions and wars that we read about weren't just random acts of fate, but the quiet, deliberate work of unseen professionals operating in the shadows?